So we're delighted to have more than 120 years experience of business aviation on this panel. And then there's also the others, apart from Lou. So what we wanted to do is we're going to look back and look forward. This isn't going to be just looking at a trip down memory lane, but we're also going to see the key trends and go through them in the future. But Bob, do you want to start by introducing yourself first?
Yeah, my name is Bob Zuskin. I've been in this business for too long. February of next year will mark my 40th year. I started in the brokerage community in February 1979. It was a couple years after Jesus was born. And then in January of this year, my company, Jet Perspectives, will be celebrating its 20th anniversary. And let me say that I'm a one-man boutique. I have no marketing budget. My biggest marketing expense is renting a tie for these events. But also, I recognize that we have behind me these iconic names that are in the business, who are great stalwart companies. And I can't compete. But Al, I also recognize that this is my 5th time that I've been to a CJI. And this is the first geriatric panel that you've put together. So thank you very much. So with that in mind, and since I can't compete with the dollar amounts here, I propose something. This is a Geritol bottle, and I'm suggesting that Jet Perspectives have a Geritol party right after we break from here. And for the millennials that are out there, this is the juice right here. So, so Lou and Wayne, I think, we'll pass it around later on. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Wayne Starling. I'm the rookie on the panel here. I've been in banking total about 30 plus years. Got into the aviation actually 20 years ago when I was part of a startup in Boise, Idaho, which later became PNC. And I attempted to retire 2 years ago. That didn't work out too well. My wife says I failed miserably. So right now I'm doing some work with AOPA and the new, also the director for IATA, the new International Resale Aircraft Association. So I'm excited to be here with these two guys, especially my far right friend over here. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. Lou Seno, I'd like to point out that I might be older than these two gentlemen to my right, but my hair's still a lot darker. So.
Thanks.
But I started, I got selling small piston airplanes 45 years ago, and then transitioned into aircraft financing and had just a great run financing airplanes, and spent my last 5 years commuting to Danbury, Connecticut, and with my good friend Keith Hayes when GE was blowing and going back then, and then retired from the finance business and had the opportunity to run JSSI for 5 years and kind of semi-retired and moved down here to Florida in the winter, and I work on the aircraft appraisal program up at Embry-Riddle with Rick and do a few things there, and then my colleagues at JSSI let me hang around with them and help them with some of their projects. So happy to be here.
So we had a call, which is more preparation than I normally do. And we came up with 4 key themes in the market: professionalism, finance, information, size and range. Oh no. Oh, it worked. We'd like to see if anyone can guess who is the person on this photo, quickly. Yeah, it is Lucino. Can you do this one? Yeah, there's it's not showing on our monitor as well. But, This is
Wayne, you're
Oh, that's not an old one.
this is from 30 years ago.
a year ago, right? Come on, he said
I get better looking.
you couldn't find an older photo?
And just to put things into perspective, I got myself from 1980.
Oh, cute.
Right. Professionalism, which is something we've completely undermined. Lou, do you want to start by talking about?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Let me just look back with respect to the OEMs, and I know my good friend Brian Foley is here, but you know, when I kind of look back into the early 80s when I was selling financing, the relationship between the resale community and the OEMs, I won't say it was adversarial, but there was no interface. And I think if you were selling a late model used airplane and you called the local rep who was a new OEM salesman, you'd be hard pressed to get a brochure. But Brian did something 20 plus years ago in Teterboro where he openly invited the industry, resellers, finance people, insurance people, attorneys, accountants, everybody that it takes truly to put a deal together. Shortly thereafter, I think our friends in Savannah at Gulfstream did a similar thing. They threw in golf, was really great. Embraer does something now up in Melbourne every year, and I think Bombardier does that residual program with the lenders. So if you look back at the last 2 decades, that really comes out, and it's just evident the way that the resale community has interfaced with everybody. You had 2 CEOs here yesterday and today speaking, so I think sort of it takes a village to get a deal done, and it's really nice to see everybody sort of rowing the boat in the same direction.
Bob, have you seen the appraiser community professionalize?
It is. The ASA has made great inroads into recognizing the value of appraisals to the process. But I'd like to begin by talking about, for instance, when I began in 1979, the brokerage community, the aircraft sales community really was the Wild West. There were, at least to my knowledge, there weren't that many appraisers out there, if at any. And so I think the growth of the appraisal community really began in the 1990s and continuing with more sophisticated transactions in the early 1980s, for instance, and these guys can attest to it better than I can. Many of the deals were just done with short form bill of sales. There weren't attorneys, there weren't appraisers, there weren't consultants. But over the years, appraisers have become somewhat scientific in their approach, although I would argue as an appraiser that what I do is part science and part art, and it also comes with experience. So I am one of the few appraisers who was not certified, and I have deepest respects for any certified member of the community, but I just choose to just run by myself, I think. So I'm doing all right. I'm not starving to death. I'm at $15 an hour, and I'm doing okay.
And you're not certified in any way at all?
No.
But
I'm not talking about appraising.
No, I mean, you've done USPAP. You're USPAP compliant, so you can give yourself credit for that.
Talk about finance for a few moments, kind of what's happening. You talked about you was in finance way back. Can you put up that one slide? Or we're going to talk about...
Do you want to do professionalism first?
Oh,
and
okay.
IARDA?
I'm sorry.
Do you want to take us through to the future?
Being I'm the rookie of the group, what I saw when we got in and started our organization, there was masses of lenders in the market back then. But what was obvious was the people that were absolutely doing it right. And that's, we kind of took our cue from that. We looked at, obviously, Lou from Boeing back then. We looked at what GE was doing. We looked at Cessna Finance. And we said, what really works well for them and what do they do? And the one thing was face-to-face. And we set out way back saying that our mission was every year to get in front of 100, each person had to get in front of 100 owners at a time, every year. And we held that for 5 straight years. And what that built was a relationship with over 1,000 owners throughout the country. And that carried us really through the ups and the downs. So I think the professionalism is the fact that we worked and focused on value. We tried to go directly to owners. We talked about what we could do for them, how we could help them. We listened. And the professionalism, I think, is what put the foundation that caused us to be successful.
And Wayne, one of the things you are working on now is IARDA.
Yes.
Do you want to take us through the future?
I'm pretty excited to be working with them, and especially with what we're working on. And there was a presentation yesterday on ethics, and I was a little bit really put out by it because it really made everything look really bad. And I can tell you, every industry here, I don't care who you're in, what industry you're in, you've got about 20% that are just bad. They do things they shouldn't do, and they do it consistently. Well, the Dealer Association is no different. And what we're working on 3 key initiatives. One is they're working to build an accreditation for every dealer that will be standards that they will be held to and measured by on every 2 to 3 year basis. And then every actual salesperson will have to be certified. And they'll have to be certified based on knowledge, based on ability, and based on skills. And so they are really trying to set the pace to bring true professionalism to the industry and set some standards that everybody could be measured by. And ethics is a major, major part of this, the ethics portion of it. So when we talk about professionalism, the reason why I joined them and the reason why I took on the responsibility to help with the project is because of the professionalism they're trying to bring to the industry.
So to wrap this one up, you think 20 years' time, the industry is going to look much more professional than it does now? Lou?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just as what I was saying with the OEMs, I mean, I would say over the past 2 decades, the resale industry, I think, has gotten far more sophisticated, far more professional. You're obviously now taking it to the next level with education and certification. So, you know, all good.
Okay.
Yeah, there's going to be a component of it of continual education, which will really, I think, continue to help raise the bar.
But if I may inject here, I mean, I'd also point out that this is an incredibly sexy business. And I think the fact that the 3 of us are up here, and I know many of you out in the audience are here because you have been good people, you've been fair people, you've been honest people. Those who have fallen by the wayside oftentimes were afflicted by greed. And I don't think that we are going to have a monopoly on how pure we are as an industry. I think that with the sort of the sex appeal of business jets and the money that's involved, it's still going to attract people who really are out for themselves. So I hope in 20 years, though, that we're able to weed them out a little bit quicker.
Okay, and I guess we also should point out that so professionalism's improved, we see it getting even more. Is the industry going to lose its fun when it becomes super corporate?
No, it's a great industry.
Okay.
And the analogy, and all my friends have heard me say this 50 times, the analogy that I make about this business, it is like working in a candy store, where as an appraiser, I can rarely taste the product. Yeah, there are times, when I can fly in an airplane and get to enjoy it, but I think many of us in this room, are lucky enough to fly around on private jets and sort of get a taste of the big life. But many of us are just simply servicing the business, and this is a very big business, and there's a role for many, many people with many, many different types of talents.
Okay. One of the other things we talked about is information. Bob, when you started out as a sales guy, how did you get data?
Well, actually, I started as a researcher, and when I started in 1979, I didn't know the difference between a Cessna 150 and a 747. But I was hired by a brokerage firm in Washington, D.C. And back in the 70s, Washington, for a number of reasons I won't bore you with, was sort of the center of the corporate aircraft brokerage community. And that was truly the Wild West. And what changed everything so dramatically was the advent of Amstat. They came out first, probably about 82 or 83. Prior to that, the most successful brokerage firms, of which I'm proud to have been a member, had their own research departments. We did everything that Amstat did and JetNet did. We would just routinely call owners and operators. Are you looking to buy? Are you looking to sell? Are you looking to trade? And that information was collated and used. And frankly, we knew the market very, very well. When Amstat came out, that was the great leveler for the industry. It allowed, maniacs with a roll of quarters in a phone booth and an Amstat subscription to go into business, and they could consider themselves experts on the market. But at the end of the day, I think those people again were found out to be for who they are. So now what's happened with Amstat and JetNet, those are sort of the standards. That is the basis by which everybody has to win. So amongst the brokerage and sales community, you go beyond Amstat and go beyond JetNet by finding out an airplane that's for sale that they don't know about, and you probably got about 2 days to get it sold, or you become aware of a price of an airplane that nobody else can think it could be had for. So, Amstat and JetNet, yes, they're all great for the business. They allow us to have instant access to the marketplace, but at the same time, they don't tell us everything, and the most successful brokers and dealers and appraisers are those that can go beyond what everybody else has on their desks.
Lou, when you were a financier, you've seen, the information change. You used to call up escrow agencies and ask them for people to go and visit, didn't you, when you started? Now we've got so much more information. We've got, aircraft cost calculator. We've got Conklin and Decker. We've got Asset Insight. We've got, Blue Books, VREV, Aircraft Blue Book, VREV, Aircraft Post. So much data, but transactions are still private. Do you see more information coming out, or do you think there'll be a point where the industry doesn't ever completely become opaque, like, say, shipping, where you can get shipping rates?
I think the information that is available, and Bob, as you said, back then you guys would call and manually make notes, because I remember being in your office.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but people use the term Amstat and JetNet together in the same sentence as they do Blue Book and VREF.
Exactly.
But if you just between today and yesterday, people who have been up here, they have their go-to broker for a specific aircraft. And hey, if I'm financing a late model G450, I know I can call this person and get that data. There are, you have Aircraft Post out there today. And so I think we have more information today, I think, than we've ever had. And I think as the technology increases, that's going to become more prevalent.
One of the challenges we have is technology and information is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
I remember back when Amstat was just coming out, and we made the mistake one time of sharing the information with an owner, and I got corrected real fast. that was the dealer's responsibility because they were the ones that helped them understand the information and use it. Today, there's so much information available that I think some people have taken a back seat to the true sales process, and they're trying to rely too much on the customers understanding the information, and we know that's a kiss of death. So I think that if you don't continue to embrace the fact that this is a people business, it always has been and always will be, information and technology should assist, not replace. And I think that's what creates a lot of the problems we have today.
Okay, let's look at finance. Oh no, I don't know. Finance, it's great. Let's come up. And your chart is showing, you just can't see it, Wayne. Do you want to take us through finance?
Okay, I can't see the chart there, but I've got some notes here. And what you'll see here, oh, here we go. Well, and it's so far away, I can't read it anyway. We are old, so. If you take a look, this is some numbers from 1998 to today. And what you would see if you can read them there, in 98 there was 4,000 jets sold and 9,000 in 2017. Turboprops were 3 and 4, but the key is there was a total of 7,000 in 1998, 7,000 sales. In 17, there was over 13, about 13.6 sales. Now that's almost doubled. But to give you something that's really interesting is in 98, they were over 16 lending institutions that had sales forces of 5 or more direct salespeople. Today, there's only 6 that have over 5 direct salespeople. The industry's double in sales, but the number of direct lenders with national sales forces has been reduced by over half. Now, there's more lenders because there's more banks. There's probably 1,000 out there because today every small bank is doing, a loan because they need the assets. They used to have real estate. They don't have that anymore. They can put on the books to make up for it. So that if you think about that, the lending has been reduced by half as far as the companies that's available today versus what they were back when Lou was running Boeing.
All right, so let me ask you a question, if I may, because you're most recently out of the finance business. So it's still competitive. I think if you're buying a new airplane, depending on whether you're a high net worth individual, publicly traded company, overseas deal, do you think people have their niches? So like today, if you wanted to go out and do an operating lease on a large cabin airplane, could you get 3 quotes? You'd be hard pressed to. You could, but you got to really work for it. And what you're talking about is exactly what's happened. Back then, every one of those 16 people did everything that was available. Exactly.
From A to Z. But of course, back then, what was the highest priced aircraft being sold?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
10, yeah.
So the size and the dollars has made the big difference. Today, most of the lenders specialize. Now, they'll have a real specialty, but they'll do other things, and that doesn't mean that they only do that. PNC is a good example. They specialize in the asset base, but they can do loans and leases too, and they do them. But what's happening is we're seeing a lot of smaller banks and other people that are doing different things. A good example is AOPA. They've already done 700 and something loans this year, but most of what they do is in the smaller piston market, but yet they're providing a tremendous service. And then, if you talk about other banks, and 5 years ago, small banks that did less than 2 loans a year made up 50% of the loans that was done in total. So today, it's really a different environment when it comes to lending because your national sales forces are very small where you got the highest level of professionalism and knowledge.
So you're saying there is crossover, but everybody has a niche or a sweet spot.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Bob, is this how it's going to stay? We're going to see more, the days when one bank did everything, it's going to be more niche lenders, more fragmented.
Well, the finance community, of course, is a big part of my client base. And in the 20 years that I've been in business by myself, I have seen a cycle. Banks come and go. And even the most largest and successful banks, I think, at some point realized they didn't want to take on the risk, nor did they have the expertise that this market demands. But even though there seems to be, as Wayne pointed out, a compression in the number of lenders and lessors out there, institutional lenders and lessors, there has been, through ASA, more and more appraisers out there. Thank you for the competition. So there are more appraisers getting out there, and I think more and more people understand the importance of appraising. So rather than suggest that there's going to be any compression amongst appraisers, I think right now there's probably, I think ASA has roughly about 100 or 150 appraisers that have been certified. Not all of them are going to go into the business of appraising airplanes, but I think appraisals and related financial services, servicing the financial community, is going to expand over the years.
Okay, size, range, and cost.
Go ahead, Bob.
So when I started out, the biggest new airplanes that were coming out were the Gulfstream 3 and the Falcon 50. The Gulfstream 3, and I'm working from memory, was about, maybe Lou, you know, there's about $9–10 million, the first Gulfstream 3s in that range. That was the top of the line. And as we all know, today's top of the line is almost 10 times that amount. But what has happened is, we've increased the range of the airplanes. The industry has increased the range. The industry has increased the comfort and convenience that goes on the airplane. But as an appraiser, I'm always sort of fascinated by the industry, because at the end of the day, every airplane is akin to a cigar tube. And you can only put so many chairs in there. And there's only so many possible ways that you can rearrange the furniture. Everybody has lights, everybody has air conditions, everybody has broadband. So I'm always amazed at how the OEMs try to differentiate themselves from the competition. But at the end of the day, they're really all the same airplanes. But now what we have airplanes that are capable of 7,500, 8,000 nautical miles. And as an appraiser, I'm always shocked to see that the average stage length of those airplanes, the 550s and the Global 6000s, for instance, the 550s and the 650s, the average stage length, 2.5, 3 hours for those airplanes. So yes, range is critical. And as someone suggested before, one of the questions that is popping up, yes, speed is the next frontier. Because you can get any size airplane that you want, any cabin comforts that you want, and you can literally travel halfway around the world. And let's not forget, that the maximum range of an airplane is about 10,000 miles. After that, you can get to the other side of the planet, and there's no need to go for a 15,000-mile airplane, say. So speed is the next frontier, yes.
Yeah, I think just looking back at when we were Boeing Capital and Phil Condit and Jack Welch were launching the BBJ, if we sell 10 airplanes and they sold 21 after the first NBAA. So I think if you look back the last dozen years, clearly large cabin long range has dominated the market. We saw between yesterday and today, Gulfstream and Bombardier sort of battling for that top spot. Dassault with the 8X, Cessna / Textron now with the Hemisphere. So I think everybody sees that large cabin long range market and speed. Mark talked about it this morning. What's that extra speed, how it reduces costs, and it appears to where things are headed.
Yeah, and I think range and size is definitely the icing on the cake. But if you look, the bread and the butter, what's kept this industry going is the mid-cabin.
Yeah.
Because if you heard all the presentations, they talked about the average mission, the average distance. It's not a long range. It's a medium to short range. And that's the bread and butter that's kept this industry going, and I think it will continue versus just the large cabins.
So, yes, no question, is supersonic the next frontier? Lou?
I'm sorry.
Yes or no?
Yeah, I
is
would say,
supersonic
based
the
on
next-
listening to you interview Ernie yesterday, I would say yes. Yeah.
Supersonic?
I'd say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Let's do some quick fire questions and answers. Why is my badge so big? It's because we have so many baby boomers at the conference.
No, so Wayne can make notes on the back of his. That's
That's right. Get my notepad.
Question, are millennials up to anything interesting that you think is worth paying attention? Bob, you're down with the kids?
I don't know anything about millennials. Other than yesterday when Michael Malfitano spoke about the willingness of the millennials to get into a driverless car or perhaps to get into a driverless or a pilotless airplane. Yeah, their approach may be a little different, but we're older and we know better.
Yeah.
And we have more money,
And I,
or insurance at least.
Okay, Lou?
from what I've seen, millennials seem to be really interested in this next wave of urban mobility.
How does an industry run by wise old gentle people adapt to crazy different millennial experiential habits?
Lots of drugs.
Okay.
Now, you know what? There's what's keeping. Oh, thank you. Hey, there we go. Thank you.
Okay.
I think there's what's keeping us moving.
Wayne, can you, as mentioned in yesterday's panel, can you really regulate ethics or professionalism?
Can I what?
Can you regulate ethics?
Well, sure you can. You know, it's like when you meet that person and talking with them and you want to put your hand on your wallet because you just have that feeling. That's what ethics really is.
Will you need some Geritol and a lay down before the cocktails after this?
Have a drink.
This-
Can you hurry up? I'm getting very sleepy.
It's one of those lines I've never read before. Okay, question, Lou. Should NBAA be the overarching organization to promote professionalism?
You know, what I've seen is when we get things done in this industry, it's really when everybody, joins together. And, if you look at privatization, it was AOPA, that you're now affiliated with, EAA, NBAA. So I don't know that NBAA really needs to lead this, but I think it's really all the alphabet organizations.
Okay. When will hybrid electric planes appropriate for Part 91 and Part 135 obtain FAA certification? Bob?
Maybe that person who answered that question didn't understand that I was an appraiser. I'm not a crystal ball reader. But I would say, listen, this is all driven by battery technology. And as Mike Amalfitano pointed out yesterday, this is a growing field. When's it going to come? I don't know. I hope within the next 10 years.
Yeah,
I hope I'm around to see it.
the gurus up at Embry-Riddle that are into this technology big time tell me 23 to 25 in that time.
23 to 25 years?
No.
2023.
2023.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you guys normally in bed by now? Do you still use your fax machine? We actually did the panel preparation.
I replaced my telex
Yes.
recently, yes.
Yeah. We used telex for that.
Yeah.
How did the panel think the industry should recruit a more diverse, the future diverse people needed?
Well,
You know, when I look around the audience, and I'm very heartened to see younger people here. I know Joe Barber from Clay Lacey, I guess, is out there, one of the 40s, below 40s. You know, so that's very heartening to see young people and enthusiastic people. You know, when I first got into business, my mentor, my first boss, explained to me the nature of this business, and what he said to me was that this is an industry that prizes experience, and if you can keep your head above water for any length of time, every day that goes by, you become a little bit more valuable, and that's sort of been my credo for the past 40 years. So how do we get more people into the business? People are going to be knocking at, I think people generally are knocking at our door. We don't have to go looking for them, really.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody has realizations in their careers, light bulb moments that precedes their successes. What was your light bulb moment?
I don't know that I had a light bulb moment. I think, as you saw in that picture, I just, grew up in an aviation family. So, making a living in it just sort of became the natural, the thing to do.
Okay.
I had one, though. And I'm not going to go long on this, but I grew up in Washington, D.C. My father owned a pawn shop in the inner city. So I've been appraising things since I was about 10 years old, quite literally. I studied politics. I'll go quick. But the night I met my first boss was in Manassas. This is the moment. Citation 500, serial number 53 flew in. I'll never forget it. And it was at that moment that I was so enamored with private airplanes and the sound of those Pratt & Whitneys at Manassas Airport at 2 o'clock in the morning when the airplane was coming in from a paint shop. And that is like, when I got the smell of the kerosene, I was in.
I was asking you to appraise my watch, not saying you.
I could do that, sure.
And actually,
sure.
And Bob, can I get mine back? Okay. One bit of Bob, you've given us your advice. What advice would you give to someone starting out today?
Starting out in the aviation, it would be to find yourself a really great mentor and observe, listen, and study and learn. And always remember one thing. It always has been and always will be a people business. The information can help you and be your greatest asset, but you have to remember it's getting face to face with people is what makes the world go round.
Okay, and we're going to end with a really nice one. Do you think we're going to have boom-bust cycles in the future?
I would say absolutely. If you take a look at when do we have 10 to 15 fewer large direct sales organizations today? And the banks that are in it, they've got better standards, they've got better controls, and they've got better guidelines. That will prevent the problem that we had from the past.
Yeah. I recently read somebody referred to the last 10 years as the last decade. I would like to think that within our lifetime we'll never see truly a lost decade. This was a tough one, and I would like to think the peaks and valleys will be a little less severe as we go forward.
And on that cheery note, we thought we'd end with a motivational quote from someone slightly older than everyone on this panel. And as Confucius said, our greatest glory is not in never falling, but rising every time we fall. Actually, that was much more deep and motivational than I thought it was going to be. I'd like to, and on that note, I'd like to thank all of our fantastic sponsors. I'd like to thank the amazing speakers We've had 27 sessions, and it was pretty serious until the last one. We'll hopefully be back here next year. Well, we'll be back here next year. We hope all of you will be here as well, all our fantastic speakers. And I'd like to thank this final panel for staying up extra late. So thank you very much.
Bob, I didn't know you grew up.
Go, sir.